Unfortunately, we have to wait for the 11th month rotation to get back around in February before we can talk about Black folks again. But we're going to talk about it tonight. Right? But a true sign of healing this disease called racism is where we can talk about this stuff in our everyday conversation and it's in our everyday curriculum. As long as Black history remains separate from American history, it gives people the permission almost to be colorblind the rest of the year. And so, when we talk about this history, it's very synergetic because there's not a Black without white and no white without Black. It's a story of humanity, and one that no matter what race or ethnicity or sexual orientation, nationality, gender, etc., no matter where you identify, this should make you feel uncomfortable because transformation begins at telling the truth. We're going to talk about some complicated issues, and it's all meant in love. It's meant to educate, inspire, and empower. African history is the oldest human history in the world. And from ancient Egypt to present-day leaders, some of them have shaped Africa and the entire world alike. Black people were the first to develop mathematics, and their use of architecture and engineering is still baffling to the modern world. So much so that there's an entire show on the History Channel called Ancient Aliens, dedicated to saying that these things could not have been built by Black people, they had to be built by aliens, right? Aesop's wisdom actually influenced the likes of Shakespeare, Aristotle, Socrates, and my favorite, Imhotep, the father of all medicine, not just modern medicine, all medicine. These are the histories of the people that are missing, that can empower all of us. Now, I'm not here this evening to name all white people as racist haters, because we're not, I understand that. But I'm also not here to dismiss some of the racism instigated by some. In fact, let me take to white people for just a second. In fact, if you are white and you've never been in a position of power where you were able to create or vote on a law, a policy, or a system that advantaged white people over people of color, you have absolutely no reason to hold any blame, shame, or guilt. In fact, you can use your privilege to help leverage equity for everybody else. Now, if you still benefit from these same policies, these same laws, and these same systems, and you choose silence, then in fact you are as guilty of constructing racism as the very people who actually constructed it themselves. It's hard sometimes for some white people to think about other ways of thinking about Black people or people of color. Because if they thought about it any other kind of way, they would have to own that they've been lied to and bamboozled by the very people that they love. But white people weren't the only ones taught to hate Black people. Black people were taught to hate Black people too. And so if the news reports that someone was stealing, the first image that both white people and Black people are going to think, oh, they're Black. Black folks is like, oh man, I hope they're not Black. We see white men portrayed as rapists, mass murderers, and con artists on the Lifetime movie channel every weekend. But we do not clench our purses when we pass them on the street. And in respectable politics, a Black man is more palatable wearing a suit because wearing a hoodie would make him a thug. Much more of a thug than, stealing a whole country. White people also had the power and ability to write the history from their perspective, scripting themselves as the hero and the ability to legislate it as truth. And if nothing else, they had the privilege to not have to think about how life would be if they were anything but white. Those of us who've been able to break cycles of poverty and navigate the micro and macro aggressions that accompany the Black experience have been able to do so through 4 different ways. Access to information, access to a network, because your network is your net worth. Access to resources that may be financial, people, materials, and access to a support system. See, people who are financially free They don't have to adhere to speaking or dressing according to a prescribed societal norm. In fact, it is those people who get to define what those norms are. If a person is profiled because of how they're dressed, it is the character of the profiler that should be in question and not the profile. Black people in particular are expected to walk, look, and talk the way that whites in power have defined as acceptable in order to be validated and coexist with them. Go find several sources, find your own truth, and become a supplier of information rather than a consumer of education. Look for what's not being said and say it. Look for what's not being done and do that. You should be an activist on your campus, an activist in your field of study, and an activist on your job. You're going to have to do a cost-benefit analysis because doing the right thing won't necessarily be popular or legal. So I implore you tonight to remember the history, both the good and the bad. Remember it like we remember the Holocaust and 9/11. Black Lives Matter. Thank you very much.
You know what my favorite part was? The part when she said the joke like, just because someone wears a hood doesn't make them a thug, but tell the whole country that. But my whole knees went.
Oh,
I was like,
whole knees.
oh God.
Hilarious.
It was really good.